Okay, so picture this. You're in California. You finally got that ADU built. Maybe it's for your mother-in-law, or maybe you're hoping to rent it out, make a little extra cash.
Mm-hmm.
But then disaster strikes, a wildfire tears through your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Now, what if I told you there's this building material out there that could make that ADU practically fireproof?
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful idea, especially with the risk of wildfires, going up in so many parts of the world.
Right.
We're seeing them more and more often. They're getting worse. And, traditional construction just isn't keeping up in terms of safety.
That's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. We've got this really interesting document from this company called MHS, that's Modular Housing Systems.
Right.
And they're making this bold claim. They say that they can build these ADUs with aluminum framing that can withstand wildfires.
Yeah, they're really tapping into a growing concern, honestly. But ADUs themselves are getting super popular these days. They provide more affordable places to live, they can boost property values, and they give homeowners flexibility.
Flexibility.
But like you said, wildfires are a huge threat, and, those traditional wood-framed structures,
Right.
just incredibly vulnerable.
Like building with kindling almost.
Yeah.
So how is MHS proposing to solve this problem with aluminum?
Well, they're essentially saying swap out the wood for aluminum, and you've got yourself a fire-resistant ADU.
Okay.
Aluminum won't catch fire. It's not combustible, so it won't add fuel to the flames. Plus, it's really durable even after being exposed to, that intense heat.
Wait, so you're saying even if a fire sweeps through the aluminum frame, could still be standing?
That's what they're claiming. They say it might even be reusable after a fire, which is pretty amazing when you think about the total devastation these fires can cause.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about the environment. Aluminum's 100% recyclable, so it's got a much smaller carbon footprint than wood.
Okay, so we've got fire resistance, potential reusability, and lower environmental impact.
Yeah.
That's hitting a lot of the hot buttons there.
Yeah.
But what kinds of ADUs can they actually build with this aluminum system? Are we talking limited to just a few basic designs?
Actually, their modular design is really versatile.
Okay.
They can do everything from those detached ADUs, those separate little buildings you often see in backyards,
Right.
to attached ADUs that extend the main house, and even conversions of existing spaces like garages.
Okay, so plenty of options to choose from depending on what your property is like, what you need.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get down to the nitty-gritty. How do they actually make these ADUs so fire resistant? What are the special features that make them stand out?
Well, it all starts with the framing itself.
Okay.
They use this high-strength aluminum alloy that's either powder-coated or anodized to make it even tougher. It's like giving the frame a suit of armor against fire.
So the skeleton of the ADU is already tough as nails.
Mm-hmm.
What about the rest of the structure, like the roof, the walls, things like that?
They've got that covered too. For the roof and the exterior walls, they use these corrugated metal panels and a special kind of siding that's made to resist flames.
Okay.
This basically creates a barrier that helps to stop the fire from getting inside.
So even if you've got burning embers raining down, they're less likely to ignite the ADU itself.
Exactly.
It's starting to sound like a fortress.
Yeah.
But what about the inside? Aren't there still flammable materials in there?
To protect the interior, they use these special panels called FSS. That's flame-proof structural insulated panels.
Okay.
Think of them as super strong, fire-resistant sandwiches that make up the walls and ceilings. They use materials like magnesium oxide boards, and they've got non-flammable insulation to minimize the heat transfer.
Hold on. Even the insulation is fire resistant.
Yep.
That's amazing. What about windows and doors, though? Aren't those kind of weak points?
Not in this case. They use double-glazed windows and doors with aluminum or metal frames that are made to handle high temperatures.
Okay.
They've really tried to seal off every possible way the fire could get in.
Wow, they really thought of everything, haven't they?
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive how much attention they paid to every little detail just to make these things as fire-resistant as possible.
Yeah.
But let's compare apples to apples here. Wood versus aluminum, how do they stack up when it comes to fire safety?
Well, we already know that wood fuels fire while aluminum resists it, but beyond that, there's the whole issue of what happens after a fire, the structural integrity.
Right.
Wood tends to get warped and weak after a fire, often to the point where you just can't use it anymore. Aluminum, on the other hand, usually keeps its strength and shape.
That makes a huge difference, not just for safety, but for rebuilding costs, too.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have to replace the whole structure, that's a lot of money saved.
Exactly. Plus, like we said before, aluminum's recyclable, while wood construction, leads to cutting down more trees.
Yeah.
And here's another interesting thing. Aluminum construction can actually help to slow down the spread of fire because there's no traditional attic space for the flames to move through.
So you're saying that by choosing aluminum, you're not just protecting your own property, you could potentially be helping to protect your neighbor's properties too.
It's possible. The lack of a flammable attic space can really change how a fire spreads. And don't forget about the potential for reusing the materials, which can save money and resources in the long run.
It sounds like MHS is really onto something here.
Yeah.
They're not just dealing with this very real problem of wildfires. They're doing it in a way that's good for the environment and could even save people money.
They're really trying to offer a complete solution. It's more than just swapping one material for another. They're looking at the whole process of building and thinking about how to make it safer and more sustainable.
This is fascinating stuff. But I'm sure some people listening are thinking, okay, this sounds great, but what's the catch?
That's a great question, and it's one we're definitely going to look at more. Because even though aluminum framing has all these advantages, there are some trade-offs to think about, especially when it comes to cost and how easy it is to find.
Okay, so let's unpack those trade-offs in the next part of our deep dive. We'll be right back after a short break.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're back and ready to dig a little deeper into this whole aluminum framing for ADUs thing. Before the break, we were talking about some potential downsides, and I think the one that's probably on everyone's mind is cost.
Yeah, for sure. Let's just address the elephant in the room. Aluminum framing it is generally more expensive up front than sticking with traditional wood framing.
I can see that. It's more specialized material, and I imagine the process of making it is more complex. But are we talking like a huge difference in price?
It really varies, depends on a bunch of things. The size of the ADU, how complicated the design is, even where you are can affect it.
Right.
But generally, you're looking at aluminum framing costing maybe 10–20% more than wood framing on average.
Okay, so it's not nothing, but it's not like completely out of this world either.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing MHS would argue that the long-term benefits kind of make up for that higher initial cost.
Oh, absolutely. They really emphasize the potential savings from not having to rebuild after a fire, which, could be a lot of money.
Right.
Plus, aluminum is super durable, hardly needs any maintenance, so you'll save on upkeep costs over time.
And there's that whole peace of mind thing. Knowing your ADU can actually withstand a wildfire, that's got to be worth something, right?
Yeah, that's priceless, especially if you're in a fire-prone area.
Yeah.
But going back to costs for a sec, I'm curious about finding people who can actually build with aluminum. Is that a potential problem?
That's a great point. Because if you need special crews to do the work, they could add to the expense and how long it takes to get it built.
Exactly. The good news is MHS's system is designed to be efficient. Remember we talked about how they use a modular approach?
Yeah.
So the pieces are all made off-site in a factory, then they're brought to the site and put together like a giant Lego set.
So you wouldn't need like a whole team of expert welders or anything. No.
Nope. Because all the pieces are already cut and designed to fit together perfectly, the whole process is way simpler, and you don't need specialized labor as much. That can mean saving money and getting it built faster.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming making the pieces in a factory also helps to cut down on waste and makes the whole thing more efficient.
You got it. By making the components in a controlled environment like a factory, MHS can really minimize how much material gets wasted, and they can make sure the quality is consistent.
Okay, so we've tackled the cost issue, and it seems like the potential savings and efficiency you get with aluminum construction could balance out that initial higher price. But what about design flexibility? Do people have to settle for cookie-cutter designs if they go prefabricated?
That's a common thought. But with MHS's system, you're not limited to just a few standard options. While they do offer some pre-designed models, their modular approach means you can customize things quite a bit.
So you can change the layout, add some personal touches, that kind of thing.
Exactly. You can actually work with their design team to create an ADU that really fits what you need and what you like, both how it looks and how it functions.
That's good to know. Now, we've talked a lot about how fire-resistant aluminum is, but we haven't really touched on its energy efficiency. How does it perform in that area?
That's important, especially these days. It's worth noting that aluminum itself is a good conductor of heat, which, might sound kind of weird when we're talking about energy efficiency.
Yeah, so in the summer, wouldn't an aluminum building just heat up like an oven?
It could if it wasn't properly insulated, but that's where MHS's system really shines. They put high-performance insulation in their panels, and that creates a thermal barrier that helps keep the temperature inside the ADU stable.
So you're telling me an aluminum ADU could actually be more energy efficient than a traditional wood-framed one?
It's definitely possible, especially when you consider that prefabrication leads to tighter construction and less air leakage. Plus, if you design it right and position it well, you can take advantage of passive heating and cooling, which means you won't have to rely on your HVAC system as much.
Now that's what I call sustainable building.
Yeah.
Sounds like they've really thought this through. But let's switch gears for a minute and talk about the environmental impact of actually producing aluminum. I know it can be recycled over and over, but isn't the process of making it pretty energy intensive?
That's a good point. Making aluminum does use up a lot of energy. It's something to think about when you're looking at its overall environmental impact. However, the industry is moving towards using more renewable energy sources to produce aluminum, and that helps reduce carbon emissions.
So people choose aluminum that comes from companies that are really focused on sustainability. That would be a good step.
Definitely. And remember, aluminum can be recycled forever without losing its quality, which is a huge plus. It creates a closed-loop system that cuts down on waste and means we don't need to use as much brand new material.
Okay, so the environmental impact of aluminum is a little complicated, but there are ways to make smarter choices that minimize the negative effects.
Exactly. It's about taking a broader view and weighing the pros and cons. And for a lot of people, that mix of fire resistance, durability, and recyclability makes aluminum a really attractive option.
It's a strong argument for
Yeah.
sure. But let's zoom out for a second and think about the bigger picture. How does this whole innovation with aluminum ADUs fit into the larger conversation about building sustainably and preparing for disasters?
Now that's where things get really interesting. We're seeing more and more people realizing that we need to build communities that are resilient, especially with climate change and natural disasters happening more often.
Right.
And this idea of building with fire-resistant materials is a perfect example of how our thinking is changing.
It's like we're finally starting to see the connection between the choices we make individually and how they affect the well-being of our communities and the planet as a whole.
Exactly. And the more we can encourage these kinds of innovative solutions, the better prepared we'll be to face whatever challenges come our way.
Well said.
Yeah.
But I bet some people listening are feeling a little overwhelmed with all this information. If someone's thinking, okay, a fire-resistant ADU sounds awesome, but I don't even know where to start, what advice would you give them?
First things first, do your research. Look into different builders, compare the different ways they build things, and really think about your budget and what you want in the long run.
And don't be shy about asking questions. Talk to companies like MHS, find architects and builders who specialize in fire-resistant construction, and get a feel for what's possible.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, especially when you're making a big decision like building an ADU.
Great advice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know we've been focusing mainly on MHS and what they're doing, but are there other companies or groups out there working on similar solutions for fire-resistant construction?
Oh, absolutely. MHS is definitely one of the leaders in this field, but they're not the only ones. There are quite a few companies and research institutions that are looking into innovative fire-resistant materials and building techniques.
That's encouraging to hear. It means there's growing support for this whole movement towards building things that are safer and can withstand more.
Exactly. And as more people want these kinds of solutions, we can expect to see even more innovation and competition, which will hopefully make fire-resistant construction more affordable and easier for people to get.
That would be amazing. Imagine entire neighborhoods built with materials that can resist fire. It would really reduce the risk of major damage and create a much safer environment for everyone.
And it's not just about the homeowners. Think about the firefighters who risk their lives fighting these fires. If we can make their jobs safer by making wildfires less intense and harder to spread, that's a huge victory.
It's about creating a culture where we're prepared and resilient, where we're dealing with these challenges head on instead of just reacting to them after they happen.
Exactly. It's moving from if it happens to when it happens, and it's really good to see that shift happening.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked a lot about the practical side of fire-resistant construction, but what about how it looks? Can a fire-resistant ADU also be stylish and beautiful?
That's a great question, and the answer is a definite yes. Those days of fire-resistant buildings having to look like concrete bunkers are over.
So you don't have to sacrifice style for safety anymore.
Not at all.
Yeah.
With all the advancements in design and materials, you can have any architectural style you want while still making fire resistance a priority.
So whether someone wants a sleek, modern ADU or a cozy craftsman bungalow or a charming farmhouse cottage, it's all possible with fire-resistant construction.
Exactly. The key is finding a skilled architect and builder who understand both how to make a building fire-resistant and how to make it look good.
It's about that perfect balance between functionality and beauty, form, and function.
And because more and more people want fire-resistant homes, we're seeing more architects and designers specializing in this area. So homeowners have more options than ever before.
That's great to know. It means that creating a safe and resilient home doesn't have to mean giving up on your personal style or vision.
Exactly. You can have a home that reflects your taste and what's important to you, while also giving you peace of mind and protection.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of fire-resistant ADUs, what are the key things you want our listeners to take away from this?
I think the most important takeaway is that we have the power to make choices that lead to a safer and more sustainable future for ourselves and our communities.
It's about realizing that the way we build and the materials we use have a huge impact not just on our own lives, but on the environment and the well-being of future generations.
And it's about being open to innovation, exploring new possibilities, and challenging the way things are usually done.
Well said. It's been a really insightful journey exploring what's possible with fire-resistant construction and imagining a future where our homes are both beautiful and resilient.
It's been great sharing this deep dive with you and our listeners. Hopefully, it's given people some new ideas and got them thinking and talking.
And who knows, maybe it's even sparked a passion for building a better world, one fire-resistant ADU at a time.
That's a great thought to leave our listeners with. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
All right, so we're back, and you know what they say, the best way to predict the future is to create it.
Right.
So let's talk about how this shift toward fire-resistant construction could actually, like reshape the future of housing and development.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing to think about. We've already seen how, the fact that wildfires are happening more and more is pushing people to come up with new building materials and techniques.
Exactly, and it's not just about protecting one house here and there anymore. It's about building whole communities that can bounce back from these natural disasters.
Absolutely. And as more and more people realize that, we can expect to see changes everywhere, like from government policies and building codes to how insurance companies do things and even what people want in their homes.
So it's not just this little niche market anymore.
Right.
Fire-resistant construction could become the new standard, especially in places that are really prone to wildfires.
Exactly. And as more people demand these types of solutions, it'll probably bring the cost down and make fire-resistant construction something more people can afford.
That would be huge. Imagine whole neighborhoods built with stuff that can stand up to fire.
Yeah.
It would dramatically lower the risk of, catastrophic damage.
Yeah.
And it would make things safer for everyone.
Totally. And it's not just about the people who live there. Think about the firefighters who have to put their lives on the line to battle these blazes. If we can make their jobs safer by making these fires less intense and harder to spread, that's a win for everyone.
It's about creating a whole culture of being prepared and resilient where we're tackling these problems head on instead of just reacting after something bad happens.
Exactly. It's a shift from thinking if it happens to when it happens, and it's good to see that happening.
For sure. Now, we've talked a lot about, the practical stuff about fire-resistant construction, but what about how it looks? Can a fire-resistant ADU also be, stylish and a beautiful place to live?
Oh, definitely the days when fire-resistant buildings all look like concrete bunkers are long gone.
So you don't have to choose between safety and style anymore?
Not at all. With all the advances in design and materials, you can have any style you want and still have that fire resistance.
So someone could have like a sleek modern ADU or a cozy craftsman bungalow or even a charming farmhouse look and still have that fire-resistant construction.
Exactly. The key is to find a good architect and a builder who get both the technical side of making it fire-resistant and the art of making it look good.
It's all about that perfect balance between making it work well and making it look beautiful form and function.
And because there's this growing demand for fire-resistant housing, we're seeing more and more architects and designers focusing on this area, so homeowners have tons of options now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It means people don't have to give up on their own style or vision just to have a safe and resilient home.
Exactly. You can have a home that reflects your taste and what's important to you and still have that peace of mind knowing it's protected.
So as we wrap up this whole deep dive into the world of fire-resistant ADUs, what are the main things you want our listeners to take away from all this?
I think the most important takeaway is that we all have the power to make choices that create a safer, more sustainable future for ourselves and everyone around us.
It's realizing that how we build things and what materials we use have a big impact not just on us, but on the environment and even on future generations.
And it's about being open to new ideas and possibilities and challenging the way things have always been done.
Well said. It's been an amazing journey exploring what we can do with fire-resistant construction and imagining a future where our homes are beautiful and safe and strong.
It's been great sharing this deep dive with you and all our listeners. Hopefully it's given people some new things to think about and talk about.
And you never know. Maybe it's even sparked a passion for building a better world, one fire-resistant ADU at a time.
That's a wonderful thought to leave everyone with. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.